markets of every kind in the world, and perhaps he'd be in New York or Washington or London or Brussels or wherever, and they would control via regulation, supposedly, hedge funds, insurance companies, stock markets, foreign exchange markets, commodity markets, and all of that under one roof. And the reason they want to do that is they don't want regulations. They have regulations now, and they're not followed because the regulators are all controlled by these people. So that's not what they're after. They're after centralized control to more easily meld it into their world government. Number 3 is they're going to be talking about free trade and globalization. And they're running into some real snags because there have been subsidies of manufacturing of vehicles in the United States and in France and in Russia. They're seeing again the massive depreciation of currencies in order to be those currencies to be competitive in the export markets that they export to, and of course that makes everything that we do in the United States more expensive. So we can't export hardly anything because we can't compete. And even the Swiss are doing it, which is very surprising. And so, well, I think the final outcome...
Hold that thought. We'll be back here in just a moment with Bob Chapman. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and of course our guest is Bob Chapman, the international forecaster, and we're talking about the G20 meeting, which is being held in Europe this week. And Bob says, of course, everything is, oh my goodness, you shouldn't want to protect your own country, Why, that's, you're a protectionist. That's a terrible thing. Well, what we need to do is have open borders and global economy. Well, that has led to the loss of most of our manufacturing. As you see, the people behind this hate America. They hate industry. They want to lower the living standards of the American people. So they've intentionally transferred our manufacturing overseas. And why shouldn't manufacturers go over there? They get special tax breaks. And then, of course, they can bring their products back into the United States without any tariffs, and of course at a fraction of the cost if they were produced here. And that way they're gradually transferring our wealth to other countries. But a lot of the other countries in the world don't want this globalism. They want to protect their own countries. Could you imagine that? People in Europe want to protect their countries rather than give over their sovereignty to this globalist utopian dream. Of course, what it really means is you're going to end up with a world dictator. And I guess some of them are a lot smarter than our people are because they keep pushing it and the rest of the world doesn't want it. So what do you think is going to come out of the G20 meeting, Bob?
Well, I think in respect to the free trade and globalization, I think it's a sacrifice that the internationalists are going to have to make because it's going to fall apart. I mean, we've got subsidization of industries. We have new tariffs have been put up. We have deliberate depreciation of currencies to be competitive. And we've lost almost 7 million jobs, almost all of them to free trade and globalization over the last 8 years. And that's a horrible price to pay. And it's continuing. These transnationals such as IBM and even the automobile manufacturers who were looking for money have been doing it since 1980.
And what you really mean is they're transferring, General Motors is transferring its production to Russia, to China, to South America, and we're helping to pay for it, but we can't let the American people know that. They have no intention of keeping their production here, but they'll take all the money we'll give them. And the same thing is true for Ford. They're doing the same thing. All of the manufacturers are moving offshore. Well, we can't tell the American people. We've got to give them the idea, we just give them a few more billion or $100 billion here, or $25 billion there. I think they want another $26 billion now. It's not going to solve the problem because they're intent upon moving offshore. But they will not tell the American people that about all the new factories in Russia and in China and in South America. Why? The American people aren't smart enough to understand globalization. Go right ahead, Bob.
Well, you're right. And I think what it's going to lead to is I think it's going to force Congress to enact tariffs. and on goods and services, which is the best possible thing that can happen in the United States. We lived and worked with tariffs ever since 1800. Our original
the founders of America
of them between 1790 and 1800, which was called British mercantilism at the time, was a complete disaster. And so we've had tariffs ever since, up until really the last 20 years. And we've got to go back to them, otherwise we can't compete. It's impossible.
We have to protect our industries. Certainly it's an imperfect system because mankind is perfect, but if we don't protect our laborers, believe me, and our standard of living, believe me, every other country is going to protect their people and their standard of living, and they have tariffs of one form or another, or value-added taxes, or all sorts of tricks to make their goods more competitive. It is only our leaders who want to sacrifice our jobs, but they cannot tell the American people that. They have to tell us how well we're doing with globalization. Ladies and gentlemen, look at the unemployment figures and look at the end of where this all leads. It leads to the destruction of the America that we know and love. Go ahead.
Well, you're right about that. And I think finally the people who have lost their jobs are finally getting the message. And one of the problems with people who aren't as bright as others is they do think they understand and they know, and they don't. And all too often they're not willing to listen. And so the outcome, of course, is that they lose their jobs like they have. Their income has dropped from $32 an hour to $12 an hour, and they're reeling around mentally trying to figure out what happened to me. And the answers are out there if they just listen.
The truth is out there, and ladies and gentlemen, we don't need more government spending. We need more production by our companies. But our leaders are intent upon shifting our manufacturing overseas. And they've been working at this for a long period of time. We do not need more government spending. We need more manufacturing if we hope to survive as a free nation. Well, Bob, we'll go right ahead.
Well, I was just thinking of that song, how I used to listen to it when I was a kid, and how everybody was so pro-America, and all of the good things about America, and things have changed just so dramatically since then.
But you know, they don't play this song because they control the media. They don't want people to love America. They don't want to have that wonderful feeling of loyalty to this country. What they want to do is destroy a loyalty. What they want is loyalty to this globalist dream. That's why they do not allow this to be played on radio ordinarily, and that's why I've decided to use it as our theme song. Go right ahead.
Well, I'm glad you do, because I've always liked it, and I always liked Kate Smith. Where I lived on the East Coast, she came on every day at noontime. And when I was little, I was home from school. You came home from 12 to 1, and you had lunch and went back to school. And so I heard her quite a bit. But anyway, some of the things that are going on in the markets today, I think last week I alluded to this, but what has happened here is that the Working Group in Financial Markets, which is a legal entity which was created by executive order in 1988 by Ronald Reagan to help the markets when dire circumstances were happening, it's been abused. It's being used 24/7 in order to control markets all over the world. And what our government has done is that they have used this device just recently, and I've been using it extensively, to take the ability of the market to withstand what's coming.